Hi, thank you. My name is Jim Melzer. I'm the technical advisor for HMD. We build specialized displays for medical surgical applications. I've been in the HMD design business for a long time, starting out with military and finally ending up in commercial and aviation commercial applications. Well, I want to start by kind of trying to put this in context. What I see is a lot of these technologies that we're seeing here, and technologies and applications fall into what I'll call a AR, MR, VR pyramid, with the smaller quantity at the top, but a higher price point, higher quantity at the bottom, and a lower price point. And at the top, we see military applications. Military has been flying HMDs on their aircraft for about 40 years and will continue as long as there are humans flying in the aircraft, I predict. They've also been responsible for a significant amount of technical developments, as well as helping to foster a very good understanding of visual human factors, how we hear, how we see, cognitive workload reduction, and also biomechanics, head and neck anatomy, and things of that sort. At the bottom of the pyramid, we see consumer applications. Potentially, I think we'll all agree this is potentially the largest quantity total application. And although I think we're seeing growth, I don't think we fully realize this market space yet. And one of the reasons I think, my opinion, because you haven't not been able to answer the question, would your mom buy one? And until we can answer that question, I think the answer is we're still going to not be selling a lot. However, in that middle section, we see enterprise, and I think that this is one of the areas that I see a tremendous amount of growth going on. We see here an architect who's visualizing a design in progress, maybe showing it to a client. My son is in construction. He's a construction manager, and he's starting to see them in the field for visualizing drone footage or being able to call up plans and schematics on when they're out in the field and hands-free. Corporate training. That's my banker. I took a picture of her sitting in her office doing her corporate training. This is Bank of America. They're doing all sorts of interesting things there. And finally, the medical surgical world. Now, one of the things that we've talked about, we've heard a lot about in the last couple days is this issue of social comfort. Social comfort in that if you want to be able to walk into a Starbucks and you don't want anyone to know you're wearing a display. You want it to look basically just like a pair of glasses. That's a level of social comfort for the consumer market. But I would say that in the enterprise market, people wear stuff. Construction workers wear hard hats, tool belts, vests, steel-toed shoes. A surgeon, a doctor wears scrubs and a funny-looking hat and maybe loops and has a stethoscope. So I think that this opens up the solution space for us a little bit to be able to consider a slightly different aspect of this social comfort issue. So I'm going to focus on is this last section, which is the military, the medical and surgical market. So with apologies to Neil Stephenson and Mark Zuckerberg, I'll be talking about developments in the Medi-Verse. Now, about 30 years ago, Milgram proposed the idea of AR, VR applications and technologies falling on a continuum. And if we start on the left-hand side, we see the real environment. There's no technology here. As we move to the right, we start to see augmented reality, augmented virtuality, which we'll call video see-through, video pass-through, all the way to completely immersed virtual environment. Now, about a year ago, I did a survey of AR, VR technologies that are out there, and what I found was over 200 commercially available HMDs on the market from over 100 different companies throughout the world. And some of these are actually being used for a variety of medical applications. So what I will show is that the medical and surgical use cases are essentially a continuum across the board, a lot of different applications, a lot of different needs, and which in turn will dictate a continuum of solutions. Now, medical imagery can come from a number of different sources. We can have live high-resolution information from microscopes or endoscopes or exoscopes. We can get recorded pre-surgical information, like from a CAT scan or MRI or X-rays and things like that. We can also get computer-generated models, instructions, things like that that are being generated computationally that are not really they're not live imagery. And we can present that information in 3 different reference frames. The first one is head anchored, where the imagery is placed on the display, and no matter where the person moves their head, the imagery follows along with it. The second is world anchored, where the person can put a piece of information up in the real world, move their head, and when they come back, that information is going to be located in that same position. And the third and the most difficult is we'll call it patient anchored, and that is where the imagery is overlaid directly on top of the patient, and that so that the surgeon can take care of things with having that direct information. And here we need both head tracking as well as patient tracking to happen. Now, there are a number of applications in the medical and surgical space. Some of them are FDA cleared and some of them do not require clearance. But I think the abundance of clearances that we're seeing these days is really indicative of the growth in this application space. And the first use case is non-surgical health and wellness assessments. And what we see here is the first one on the left is luminopia. This is FDA cleared for the diagnosis and treatment of amblyopia or lazy eye. If you know a child who has this, you know that they struggle with reading because of this affliction, and this has been shown to be very effective. The second one here is iSync from think. I have to say that carefully. This is FDA cleared for the diagnosis and treatment of traumatic brain injury. The second thing, now I suppose most of us have sat through a Zoom meeting or two, especially since the pandemic, and some of us may have even experienced virtual visits with our healthcare professional. But let's take that one step further and expand into real-time remote collaboration, diagnosis, and consultation with healthcare professionals. Ohana One is a company that gives these smart glasses to doctors and surgeons in remote parts of the world, and they can use that to help diagnose and treat patients when they don't have a specialist that happens to be nearby. And Rods and Cones has a very nice real-time surgical collaboration technology. They use the Vuzix HMD, so a surgeon can essentially call in a colleague who maybe have a little more experience in that particular surgical application, and can talk to them essentially in real time. Use the camera to look at the patient and can see any display that his or her collaborative person wants to talk about. Now we can also think about using AR/VR technology to train medical professionals. The human body is, by definition, a 3-dimensional object, and it's very tough to try and see that and learn about that just from a textbook or even from a cadaver, because things move around and that sort of thing. But what if we could take that information and create a 3-dimensional image that we could spin around, rotate, take apart, and look into, and really gain a great understanding of the 3-dimensional aspects of the human anatomy. But let's take that one step further. There's 2 papers here. This first paper is very interesting. It basically says it all. It says the augmented reality-based navigation increases precision of pedicle screw insertion. Now, those of you who may not be familiar with a pedicle screw, that's basically what they do is they actually drill, put screws into the spinal vertebra to stabilize it from, let's say, an injury or a birth defect or something like that. They basically stabilize them. Now, needless to say, that needs to be very, very accurately placed. And needless to say, that because it's done freehand, the surgeons takes a number of years to really learn how to do this properly. Well, what if we were to train them to do that in augmented space? And this second paper here, which is done by some doctors down at Hoag Hospital down in Newport Beach, which is south of here, basically says if we could take a whole cadre of surgeons ranging anywhere from 15-year experienced attending surgeons all the way down to medical students, and they put them through a series of tests using AR to help them increase the accuracy of the pedicle screws. pedicle screw placement. And sure enough, this did work. So what this suggests is that we could bring these less experienced surgeons up to speed much more quickly. Now, why is this important? Because as the population of patients in the world ages, we will require, us, will require more hip, knee, back, and shoulder type surgeries. But as that patient population ages, so does the age of the surgeon population. And so what we will need to do is we will need to backfill that group of surgeons with less experienced individuals and bring them up to speed more quickly. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go into my doctor's office and she puts up a series of CAT scans or X-rays and says, okay, see, we have this issue here and we're going to do this, and this. That doesn't make any sense to me. It just, because I'm just not enough, I just can't put all these scans together and figure out what it is she's talking about. But what if we could take that information and essentially create a digital twin of ourself and the pathology that the doctor's talking about, and being able to look at that, spin it around, and be able to see what's going on, so that the doctor can not only explain it to me, but can explain it to my family as well, and let them know, yea, verily, this is a really safe thing to do. And we're seeing this actually, there's a doctor that we work with who's been doing this, and he finds it very, very effective and very, very empowering to both the patient and their family. Now, let's take that a step further, though, and we can use the AR technology to create that digital twin and rehearse a complex surgery in virtual space prior to doing this. There's a Canadian company, Precision OS, that has been FDA cleared to be able to do this. And I just read an article just recently where a group of doctors in Brazil rehearsed a very complex surgery in virtual space, and it just happened to be two co-joined twins who were joined at the head. They were able to rehearse this numerous times in virtual space and be able to, once they got started with the patient, they were able to very successfully take care of these two patients and separate them successfully in a 27-hour surgery. So, which tells you kind of how complex that was. Finally, we get to real-time full-up surgical assistance. This is Pixie Medical. They are cleared for both knee and shoulder surgery, and as you see here, they performed over 8,000 surgeries to date. This is Augmented. They have an X-Vision spine. They also are cleared. They're cleared for for spinal surgeries, and they've done over 5,000 of these surgeries so far. But let's take that a step further and let's see what can we do. And as this paper basically says, that given the option of being able to do some of the analytical steps associated with the AR system, maybe what we can do is we can actually decrease the amount of radiation that the patient and the medical staff are exposed to during the course of this surgery. And indeed, they were actually able to measure a significant decrease in the radiation exposure during the surgery. So this is a little bit of an eye chart. I recognize that, but it basically says is that this is an FDA website. You can go look this up. It's very available, and it goes through 2022. I've added a few more since that time, but what it says is that there's a number of companies which have received FDA clearances for AR/VR technology in medical and surgical applications. Now, again, not all products require FDA clearances, but I do think that the number of clearances that we're seeing here is indicative of how rapidly this is expanding into the medical and surgical market. Now, if you dive just a little bit deeper into the 510K approvals, which is the FDA clearance document, you can see that there's a number of commercially available, probably everyone, I'm sure people have heard about these, the Microsoft HoloLens, the Magic Leap, and the Vuzix M400, that have been cleared and are being used in various surgeries, for various types of surgeries. But we're also seeing what I'll call bespoke units, custom devices, that are being used for, well, maybe we'll call them higher end procedures. And on the left, we see the Augmented X Vision. I've already spoken about that one. It's it's been very successfully used. They use the Loomis waveguide displays. I'm a big fan of waveguides. In the middle, we see my company, HMD-MD. We are going into production on a device. This was designed and built by our colleagues at Kopin Corporation. They did a beautiful job of this thing. It's absolutely spectacular imagery. It's very lightweight compared to some of the devices that are out there. And what this does is this allows the doctor to put up information right in front of where he or she is operating on the patient. So rather than having to look back and forth at a monitor or up and down like this, or I've even seen it where the doctor has to turn around like this to see things, that information is displayed right above the patient in real time. The third one here, this is, I have the privilege of announcing Globus Medical will be coming out with their Excelsius XR. You can see from the numbers there, 81-degree diagonal field of view. That's going to be huge. This is a see-through HMD with very, very sophisticated tracking capability as well. I look forward to seeing that one. Now, regardless of the application or the technology, any device that we put out there has to hold to the rules of ergonomics and human factors, the visual, the perceptual issues, binocular alignment, Burgess focus mismatch, all those sort of things. The tracking accuracy, the tracking jitter, the tracking stability has to be held to. And also the biomechanics, the head, neck, and everything. Well, all that is all well and good, but in the medical applications market, we may have some additional requirements, and those are specific to the medical market. For instance, a commercially available HMD might be nicely balanced if I'm using it in an upright position like this, but in many surgical applications, the doctor is looking down like this at their patient. So what was balanced and comfortable at one point is not going to be balanced and comfortable when they've got their head down like this. In addition, because they're working at a relatively close working distance, say 16 to 20 inches or so, they may not, these commercially available HMDs are typically focused and verged at say 6 to 10 feet or more. They may not be able to focus and verge them, which could potentially cause eye strain to the surgeon. Now, another one that we learned, and this was in early on when we were doing minimally invasive cardiac surgery with the Vista Medical program, is that the color rendition has to be extremely accurate because very, very slight differences in coloration of tissue coloration can mean the difference between healthy and non-healthy tissue. So color is extraordinarily important to make sure that it's done properly. And finally, in some surgeries, the surgical team will wear a complete hood, and that's to protect them from blood-borne pathogens. And if I'm going to be wearing a hood in a situation like this, we have to start worrying about things like the bulk of the overall size of the device, as well as the heat dissipation. On the left, you see Pixie Medical. I would say that's probably that fits reasonably well inside the hood. And just knowing Vuzix, I'm sure the heat dissipation is not too much. On the other hand, to the right of that is an experimental scenario where the person inside who is part of the surgical team is wearing a Apple Vision Pro. Now, if you've seen it before, it's a large device, fits over the head, seals around the face. I would have to go out on a limb here and say that the Pixie Medical is probably going to be a little bit more comfortable than the Apple Vision Pro in this scenario. All right, well, to summarize the takeaways here, there are multiple AR/VR systems which are FDA cleared for medical and surgical applications, a whole variety of applications across the board. And these really has been shown to provide significant benefits to both the physician and to the patient. Reduced learning time for the doctor, reduced time under anesthesia for the patient, reduced radiation exposure. A game changer all the way around, and definitely a benefit. So what that basically says to me is that there's a continuum of applications, and because of that, it will dictate a continuum of hardware solutions. Basically, one size does not fit all. That we're going to have to look at each one in each procedure individually. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about was maintenance and service infrastructure. One of the things we learned in the military world was that if you're going to put these things out, these devices out in the real world, and we have them used on a constant basis, which we're hoping that they do, it will require that these things are tested occasionally to make sure that they still hold to the color rendition, that the binocular alignment is still good, that they're nice and clean, they're nice and sterile, that sort of thing. So that's going to have to something that it's going to have to be looked at. Bottom line, though, the physical and visual ergonomics are going to be critical for long-term use, and I think that what we're seeing here is that as the doctors are becoming more familiar with the technology, what we're seeing, they're starting to get a lot pickier about what when initially some of the docs that we worked with were saying, yeah, this is a really cool thing, and then 6 months later they say, but I can't wear that thing for more than half an hour. It's just too heavy, and it's just too bulky, and it's got extra stuff on it I don't need. Okay, and there we are. The bottom line here is that the technology needs to adapt to the surgeon and the surgical procedure, and I think this is something that is absolutely going to have to happen. I heard someone say a couple years ago, those of you who might be electrical engineers, we need to impedance match the display to the surgeon, and I think that really kind of says what it is. We really need to make sure that we're lined up with the requirements for the surgeon, for the procedure, and we have that person in mind, because as one doc said to me, you don't want to turn the doctor into a patient by doing this. So, and I will take any questions. And as I said, you'll see down below that this will be available on my ResearchGate page if anyone wants to get information, and I'll hang out around her a little bit more if anybody's interested. Questions? I'm sorry. I'm having trouble. I need a hat here. Yes. What can I? Yes.
Thanks. That was really great. Is this mainly only for orthopedic surgeons or for general surgeons, laparoscopies, diversified surgeons, or only for orthopedics?
We're seeing it across the board. When I was doing the research for this, I ran across probably half a dozen papers that were surveying in various areas like laparoscopy. The one that we're seeing a lot of is I'll call it the hard tissue surgery. Pardon me, I'm not a doctor. So hard tissue surgery, so like orthopedics and spine. But we're also starting to see them as I said, our first experience was in minimally invasive cardiac surgery, and that was almost 30 years ago. So I'm very confident that those are going to happen too, if they're not happening already. Did I see another question back or something? Okay, well, thank you very much.